love to see women leading really well in their own communities, and I would love to see them more courageous. I would love to see them using their voice as well, less afraid.
Welcome to the Outseat Podcast. I'm your host, Justin McRoberts. In the fall of 2018, I got to spend a few weeks on the road with Jen Hatmaker and Nichole Nordeman on their Moxie Matters tour. For 15 nights, I got to play songs and then watch rooms full of women and a few men find a kind of home in the space Jen and Nichole provided as artists and storytellers. Between stops in Texas, I sat down with Jen Hatmaker to talk about the origin of that tour and where she saw her work heading in the long run. We pick up the conversation in the middle of a chat about what it looks like, what it feels like to start a brand new book. Check it out.
I have just learned, do not fret in the first third.
Do you legitimately fret though? You actually, do
yes,
you get worried?
I fret.
Do you have that Radiohead moment where you're like, oh shit,
it's all gone, the magic's gone.
We did OK Computer, nothing else from here will ever matter again.
Nothing. It's all doomed and ruined. I don't know anything else. I'm screwed. This is ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, it happens every time. And I have to almost write myself a note, to myself from another time period. You don't panic. You've been here before.
Oh, that's good.
You remember how this feels in the last book and the one before.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're writing it. You're writing the Nichole Nordeman song to yourself from the future moment. Mm-hmm. Dear me.
Dear me, it's going to be okay. Just get to the middle point.
That's really good. You're not that far from home right now.
Right. We are in, where are we? Fort Worth. I'm 3 hours from home.
And Texas is home?
Well, gosh, let's see. We've lived here for 20 years. So my kids are all raised here. So in my family sense, yes. I lived kind of all over the place growing up. This is the longest I've ever lived anywhere by 1,000%.
Why'd you move around so much?
Let's see. When I was born, my dad was a farmer. And then he went to seminary. And then he started his sort of ministry path. And so I was the oldest child. So I was sort of the guinea pig kid that went along with the various stages of young adulthood for my parents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So by the time they finally settled in, my brother, who's 10 years younger than me, was essentially born and raised in the same city his whole life. Oh, but wow. I was in there meandering, wondering, what am I doing with my life years?
So what does it mean for you in terms of having a place that you call home? Does geography for you, is there a correlation between home and geography?
Yes. Brandon, my husband, thinks this is funny because I have probably a disproportionate, what's the word? Almost like a pride that we have lived in one place for so long. So
you're a Texan.
I'm a Texan. And I think I'm really, really pleased that my kids are, that they have a real deep sense of home. It's literally all they know. In fact, I told Brandon, just like my parents did, he and I moved around quite a bit when we were young adults, out of college and our first couple of jobs before we found our stride. And I remember after our third move in, I don't even know what, 7 years or whatever. Wow. And I mean, city moves. I remember telling him, if you die, I have no idea where to bury you. I literally don't know where to put you in the ground.
What a great conversation to have.
He's like, this is what you're thinking about?
Yes. So here's what's going on. I don't know where any of the kitchenwares. Also, by the way, here's another consideration.
I'm going to have to cremate you and just cart your ashes around until I have some sense of permanence.
Which would be a great book, by the way.
Obviously. So yeah, for me, I have something is really meaningful to me about home and roots.
Yeah. And you get to in a sense, you get to choose it on other people's behalf as well. Because part of what I hear you saying is my kids get to be here.
Yeah.
I get to provide a home for my kids. So you're outside of Austin-ish.
Right.
So that place for you is a place where you get to choose and make home for someone else, which becomes home for you in a different way. It's not just you happen to be born somewhere and you kind of end up living there.
Right, we created it. And so now we have 20 years of shared memories there and 20 years of relationships there. And so everything is so rooted.
Right.
And for me, it's been really, really stabilizing. And it's interesting because I'm married to a person who loves change. Like if I were to drive home right this minute and be home in 3 hours and say, Brandon, I feel like I want to move to Washington State. He'd be like, call the realtor. Like he just loves.
He's ready to go.
Oh, at all times. He's absolutely ready to just yard sale everything and move to Paris. So I think I'm probably the singular factor keeping us really heavily grounded. But to counterbalance that, we travel. And I give him, I'm like, these are categories in which you can constantly change things and you will not absolutely freak me out.
Is there a way for you, besides having been in the same place for 20 years and having chosen it, is there a way for you that being a Texan, that being in Texas has been soul shaping? Are there things that you could identify as like, this is true of me that would not have been had I chosen Kansas?
Positively. In fact, I was born in Kansas. And I think that it would be absolutely false to say it hadn't. But if we were going to dial it in a little bit and be even more specific, what has shaped me just irrevocably has been living in Austin. So there's Texas and then there's Austin.
True story.
And they're not necessarily the same. Does this make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So
but for folks who have no idea, who are like, who are tonight watching election results, and they're like, oh God, Texas.
Right.
And you're like, well, yes, but Austin.
Totally.
Help us with the yes, but Austin part.
I love all my Texan neighbors, and there's something so just hilariously unique about Texas. Texas loves itself.
Oh, yeah.
Austin is madly in love with itself. So, Austin just in general, and this is a little bit of a broad brush stroke. I know that, but it's just it's sort of a hippy dippy city. It's progressive. Yeah. It is, it's a little bit more liberal. It's super, super creative. We've got all the creatives. We have the government. We have the university. We have high tech.
Right.
So it's this interesting conflation of a lot of ideas and types of people, and everything that I probably held dear at some point has been deeply challenged in my tenure at Austin.
And you've valued that, and you feel like in terms of soul shaping, like being in a place that's going to push and pull, where something about being home, having a location, doesn't necessarily mean being comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, and I'm grateful for all the ways in which my city and my neighbors have stretched me. Yeah. I didn't always love it. Change can be painful.
Yes.
Stretching is not always comfortable, but I'm so much better for it. And I think I've really learned a lot, not just about the world, but I think a little bit more about what I think God's kingdom is meant for.
Yes.
And what being a good neighbor actually means in practice. And my worldview has just been challenged. And so that's just a good thing. I like that for everybody.
Yeah, there are ways in which we watch, and I do myself, the sort of exchange. It's like a trade-off between what I want is home. Mm-hmm. What I want is a sense of home. What I settle for is comfort. Like what I end up settling for when I don't go all the way to home is feeling comfortable. Mm-hmm. But comfortable, like anytime anyone honestly has a sense of home and place and location, there's always tension there.
For sure.
Like whether it's home in a relationship or home geographically, like it's almost like there's a distinctive about the difference between home and anything else. Is like, you have to be challenged and changed in order to actually call it home, as opposed to just feeling like I fully fit here. Everything here belongs in the, like I fit into like a hand in glove. I can be exactly as I am for the rest of my life.
Right. I know what you mean. I lived in plenty of places and spaces that were largely homogenous.
Yeah.
And so it was easy.
Yeah.
It's definitely easier. However, I just remained so unchallenged and so untested, and my worldview so small and narrow. Right. And I swear, I thought that was the whole world. I did. I thought the world I lived in was essentially indicative of the greater world. And so,
which is good for a time.
Maybe. That was in my younger years, definitely growing up, and even in my 20s. It was comfortable, I guess.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was neck deep raising babies, and so maybe I could only handle one thing at a time.
Right.
But yeah, that Austin is not that place for sure.
Mess and Moxie.
Yeah.
Is your what book?
Do you know, I'm honestly, what I think it is my 11th.
That's what so I couldn't tell if it was 11 or 12.
Yeah. There's like a kind of a rogue book in there. I don't know if it counts as a book. And so I'm just going to say it's 11. I don't know what to say. It's too many.
Okay. And this has been like, writing has been like your primary, when people, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, because we'll talk like, what is it you really are doing? Like, what are you really about?
Right, like what's your deal?
One way to talk about what you do, which I think is smaller now than it used to be, is that you're an author. Mm-hmm. Do you remember, as an author, was there a point at which you have a recollection of a time in which you recognize that what you did as an author mattered? Because it's a difference between like, I can write, versus like, what I do is significant culturally to other people. Was there a moment for you where you recognized that what you were doing with books mattered to people who weren't you?
I think that was probably a little bit of a slower burn than just the lights flicking on at some point, going, oh my gosh, this is a thing. I will say probably what really deepened my sense of influence, if that's kind of the word we're using to describe that, was, for better or for worse, social media. Yeah. That's really when I felt like a sense of connection with my readers. I mean, honestly, before then, what the heck? I don't know. I write a book, I turn it in, apparently it gets read somewhere. I don't know. We weren't connected. We weren't online together. I wrote my first book in 2004. And so it was just the genesis of all this, where all this was new to the whole community at large. And so I think with the advent of social media, and then it's just development, as I figured out, how do we find each other and how do I manage this well? I mean, I think I did that super poorly for a while.
Why?
Well,
what does that mean?
To circle back to your question, when you're like, when did you know that people are listening to you? I kind of didn't know they were.
Oh,
so
really?
I'm just on social media just running my mouth, I'm just saying whatever I'm saying. I mean, I have to filter, right? I am a loose cannon sometimes. And so I just did not have a sense of how many people were on the other end of those words.
Oh, okay.
And
so you came to grips with that. Like you reckon you were hearing feedback.
Yes.
And then you realized, oh, snap.
Totally.
What I say
matters.
Like moves the needle for people.
That's just it. And so because I had so tied it to some sort of traditional model of my words that are written in print, those are the words that matter, right? Those are the professional words.
Oh, very good.
Those are the credible words. Somehow an industry has stamped those words and said these count. So my social media words just felt like throwaways. Like, I don't even know who's on here. I don't even know who I have. I don't know what's happening. And so once I realized that my influence was leveraged much more powerfully on social media than by a print book at Barnes & Noble. That, through a series of a lot of bad form and regret and mistakes and I'm sorry's and I didn't really mean that. I mean, I did, but I shouldn't have said it.
Yes.
I grew up a little bit.
It's like that moment. I don't know if you saw the movie The Social Network.
I don't think
about the launch of Facebook.
Oh yeah.
And Zuckerberg runs into his ex at the bar, kind of somewhere in the middle of the movie, and she says, "The internet's written in ink, Mark."
Yes.
Where he was just is Zuckerberg, and he's just posting stuff.
It's a great example.
Just rambling, just some shit off the top of his head, and she's like, "That lasts forever."
Oh my gosh, yes.
And
relatable,
right? That was like that moment. Do you feel in that context, which is part of the next question? Like, do you feel then like a kind of responsibility to people? As a writer, speaker, like, do you have a sense of, do you feel a responsibility to people?
Oh, a grave responsibility. I mean,
how so?
I don't even think I can overstate this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If anything has become clear to me in the last, let's just say 8 or 10 years, it is that I have a fair amount of influence. I mean, in the greater scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's what I have. Mm-hmm. And it matters. And there are people on the other end of everything I say who are, just pick a thing. I mean, they're hurting, they're suffering, they're confused, they're looking for clarity, they're looking for teaching. Mm-hmm. They are needing a conversation, they need healing, they have a drink. I mean, there's so much real life, in which words matter. They're not throwaway.
No.
And so, my sense of responsibility is absolutely massive. I cannot tell you how much like brain space is taken up with my thinking of the people.
Yeah.
And who is reading and who is out there and what am I hearing from them and what are they asking me and what am I picking up in the atmosphere in our community. And so, I think about leadership all the time. Which
then, I don't know if that provides attention for you, but I know for some folks who consider themselves creative or work in the creative arts, like there is this weird mythology with regards to art, that what you do is you create, you just make something, you write what's in you, and then you put it out, and it doesn't matter what other people think, and that other people just kind of get to respond to that. You're communicating something else that even like right now you're in the writing process. You've got people in your head, like you're thinking about other people, even as you write now.
Right.
So a couple of questions. One, do you receive that as a positive? Is that like a refining? Is that, or do you is that kind of refining? Like that you have other people, you're thinking about others in your mind? And then is that specific? Like when you're writing, are you thinking about particular people? How does that work for you?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit, for me, it's a little bit less binary than that, which is either I'm writing entirely my truth or whatever the thing is, and I just devil be damned. Just let the shit fall where it may.
Yeah.
Or I'm writing for a person and I'm aiming for a message for them. I'm both those things. There's a time. There is a time, specifically, I think, as it relates very deeply to my own personal story, my own personal life, my own personal experience, where feeling hamstrung to make that more palatable for a listener is detrimental.
Yes.
I mean,
you're pulling punches to save people from things.
To save face, to save myself, to save them, to make it easier, to make it less uncomfortable. To some degree, what we've experienced just needs to be told plain.
Yes.
And so there are times that I am writing just what would be considered deeply true to myself, not necessarily with an end game in mind, other than just saying, here's what it is, do with it what you will.
Yes.
There's a lot of other times, like, for example, I'm writing right now, like you mentioned, and I do the majority of my writing in my office, and there's a wall right next to my desk, and I put sticky notes. I'll send you a picture of it. I put sticky notes all over my wall right here, and they're just little reminders of things that the people I'm writing for care about. Like this is their question. They feel like, I've got one sticky note that says something like, and I pull this out of things people say to me. I feel like a spiritual orphan. I don't know where my home is in this new world of evangelical, influence. I don't, I've got stuff that just says, I feel like a deep failure 90% of the time. So these help me.
These are things that the folks have passed along to you.
Yes, they're saying
to you specifically.
To me. These are
so that they can inform you.
So I remember these are people.
Yeah.
I'm not writing for ratings. I'm not writing for book sales. I'm not writing for the New York Times list.
You're writing for them.
I'm writing for people, and they come to me with specific. I'm a certain kind of leader. I'm not a leader for everybody, and I'm not able to lead in every capacity. I mean, I have learned at this point in my 40s that there are times that I go, guys, I have no idea. Like I'm out of my depth. I do not understand this issue. I'm not informed on it. I'm not a leader in it. I'm a learner in it. So I have learned to muzzle myself instead of always considering myself an expert in every subject matter. But my sticky notes tell me, these are your readers.
Yeah.
These are your readers. Like, serve them well.
Obviously there's a wisdom in recognizing like one's limitation. There's also like there's a way in which like recognizing who we're reaching or who we're touching base with, like recognizing that there are specific people or like a tribe of people becomes a way to like actually love. Whereas if I'm trying to be too much, like I can't love that broadly, which is sort of it's the thing that fundamentalism does to silence people. Is like you can't be everything to everyone, so it's not enough for you to be who you are to those specific people.
Yeah.
Like the tour you're doing now is not for everyone,
right?
And part of what fundamentalism would say is like there's not enough Bible, there's not enough this, there's too much this,
right?
This doesn't meet all of the requirements for like big T capital truth. And so because it doesn't, then it doesn't, then we get to say that it's whatever. But there's a comfort, there's like a good, loving, wise comfort in saying like, I know what I'm for, I know what this is for, and allows you to sort of fully invest there.
It's true. And I find myself often, for whatever reason, because I think, it's not that much of a mystery actually, because I was sort of founded, birthed, and developed in what would be probably considered traditional evangelical spaces.
Yeah.
Not just as a human being, but as a career person, as a ministry person.
Yeah.
So that was that's where I got my wings. And so sort of my spiritual migration, the questions that I now ask, the things that I have shifted on, my sense of neighbor and kingdom and Jesus and world is taken on a pretty massive transformation.
Yeah.
Because of that, so I still speak this first language. That's my native tongue. And I still have a lot of people from here and people that I love.
Yeah.
I find myself between things a lot as a bit of a person who holds some tension. I don't love it. And I've said before, I envy my friends who have been able to just funnel all the way to the end of the road into their niche community. I envy the ease of it and even just the lack of tension in that space. As it is, I end up shouldering a lot of tension. Yeah. Which I'm not convinced is a bad thing. It's just a harder thing.
And I wonder, honestly, I do wonder if that's like more so, and I don't know this for sure. This is not a conclusion. I really do wonder though, if part of actually becoming mature as a person is actually settling into that tension. And if it's actually, and maybe there are folks who like you said, they sort of funnel all the way down and it's over. I have this suspicion, and some of this is like Thomas Merton in my head talking about living in realities in which you're holding both things. And I wonder if that's actually maturity, is that you're always who you are and who you're becoming. And that as a public figure, if you're going to be a public figure, you have to do that for other people. That like your culture is what it is now, was what it was, and is becoming. Yeah. And you have to live in the tension of all of those things at the same time, where you don't actually get to just be. Right. Like maturity is not an arrival point kind of a thing.
I hope that's not true. I hope you're completely wrong.
I don't think I am.
But you know what? I don't think you are either. And I find that position increasingly challenging. I mean, if once upon a time that was noble, and we really respected our leaders who were able to pull up several chairs to the table, I find that shrinking. And anymore, if you are not all the way this all the time, all with those people, whatever that is, fill in the blank, you make nobody happy. And so everyone's mad. Yeah. So I think there's a place for it. I sense that there are more people who crave leadership that feels reasonable and but it's just not the loudest crew, you know?
Yeah, no, it's not. What I would like to do is we've touched on a few keywords. One of the things we do, and by we I mean me, the royal we. One of the things I do with the podcast every time is it's this practice of lexicon. That words are living, And as Jonathan Merritt gets into in his book, that the dictionary isn't so much a collection of words as they're defined in the cosmos, as they are like the sort of revelation of this is the way the word is used. That like a word is defined by its use over time.
Sure.
So words in your life take on a particular shape. And a part of what you end up doing is helping others redefine the way I understand certain words. So what I want to do over the next couple minutes is I'm going to put a word on the table, and you can either tell a story about it, you can redefine it, just whatever pops in your mind as I put the word on the table, you're just going to vamp on that word for a few months. So this is literally one of those, like, there's no wrong answer here. This is just like, this is how this word is shaped in Jen. Community. Talk about community.
Yeah, that word has taken on quite a development in my life for sure. My sense of community right now, in a way that it wasn't necessarily for years, is that if my community is only includes people that are essentially like-minded, more or less look like me, more or less think like me, more or less live like me and by me, not only am I missing out, but my leadership is tainted. And so my sense of community right now is very broad. And I feel communally responsible, specifically for brothers and sisters who are very different from me. In race, in ethnicity, in socioeconomic status, in nationality, in position and power. So I think that if we are not willing to look around us and seek true community, and in the eyes of people who are deeply unlike us, and even without our advantages, then we don't even know the meaning of the word.
Talk about religion.
It has a negative connotation for me. I don't know how other people feel about the word. I mean, probably once upon a time that word held a lot of beauty, but for me it holds a lot of disappointment. And so whether I'm right or wrong, I'm not sure. But to me, religion is this container word for dogma and hierarchy, patriarchy. To me, it feels like white. I don't know why. I've attached that to it. And it is very, very punitive. And so you've got to play by its rules or you do not get invited back. And so I don't like the word. And I'm not even sure Jesus would have liked the word, but there I am projecting myself onto Jesus.
That's all right. He's okay.
Like I do.
He's okay with that.
Yeah.
Talk about womanhood. What is womanhood?
Well, when I hear it, I think about my daughter. I've got an 18-year-old daughter, and she's a freshman in college. And I was looking at her Instagram today. She is phone banking in Washington, D.C., where she's going to school here on election night. And I was just looking at her Instagram, and she's posted up on her stories this map of the United States. And she's like, there are no female governors on this map. Let's change it. And I'm just thinking, what a fun time for her to be growing up as a woman. I love it. That if maybe 20 years ago, womanhood would have been complicated, and 20 years before that, it would have been even disparaged. I feel like now the word to me feels full of life and possibility and power and diversity. Like, womanhood doesn't look today like it looked 50 years ago. I mean, it might have been a little bit more of a one-note idea back then. Today, sky's the limit. I mean, her and her generation are so wonderfully radiant and interesting and all over the place. So to me, I love the idea of womanhood, especially what it's becoming and what the next generation is going to bring to it.
Talk about masculinity.
Well, that's another loaded word.
Yeah.
Very loaded word.
Yes.
If we're going to go back and say womanhood looked like a certain way 50 years ago, so did masculinity. Very prescribed idea where some of these patriarchal elements were rewarded. But, you know, I would also want to say this about masculinity. In my real life, there's theoretical life that we talk about on social media or that we see in the news, but in my real life, the life that I live with my ministry partners, with my church people, with my parents, with my husband, the men in my life are outstanding at masculinity. I think it's something they steward incredibly well and thoughtfully. They're generous with their masculinity. They are, they share the mic, they share the stage, they share the boardroom. So I am surrounded by men whose masculinity for whom my womanhood does not threaten their masculinity, but rather it's a wonderful partnership. And so, again, I feel it's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the men in my life.
That's good.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of that. Yeah.
You've used the word leader a few times, and in conversations previously, the word comes up a lot for you. I kind of wanted you to talk about leadership. There's a little tension here for me. I kind of want you to talk about leadership as a general concept, but instead, I think what I'm settling on is this. Like I said earlier, like it's easy to just call you an author, but there's clearly more to you, not even just that. I mean, identity wise, like it gets pared down. It's like you're a child of the living God and all this big stuff. But like vocationally, in terms of what you're doing and how we would identify what Jen Hatmaker is up to, you talk about leadership a lot. Is that the term for you? Is that the thing that wraps in? You've developed a tour, you've written books, you're conference speaking, you run a podcast. You have all of these things that are kind of front facing. Is there a theme? Is there like a vocational title that holds together what you do? Is it leadership? Are you leading? Are you, other folks just think, are you pastoring? Are you like, what are you doing?
That's a really great question. What are you doing? I often struggle with how to pare this down. Yeah. To the very innocent and question, what do you do? I'm like, oh God. Right. What can I pick? Because this has developed for me. Right. So a decade ago, I would have said I was a writer. For sure. I'd have summed it right up like that, put a bow on it, and then I have these little threads that come out of it. But now I feel like my work is so much broader. Yes. And it's so, books are literally just one layer, and there's so much more. So I feel like at this point, if I didn't have to pick a word that was familiar and easy to explain, but rather, what do you do? I feel like I am leading. I sense right now that I've got the capacity for it, and I have influence to steward, and it comes out in a lot of places. It comes out in books. It comes out on my podcast. It comes out on all these long form pieces. Like, let's see, 2 years ago, I was interviewed in New York City for like Time magazine. Time, right? And I remember talking to my publicist and I asked her something like, why? Like, why are they interviewing me? What? Do they know me? Like, did they look me up? Flummoxed, honestly, like flummoxed by their interest in some Texas kind of Christian writer, Yeah. And she was like, are you like that unself-aware that you don't understand what other people are seeing in your space, and your leadership capacity, and that you move the needle forward when you speak words into the world, be they print, spoken, social media, whatever the thing is. And so something about that conversation just shook me. Like, hello, what am I doing? I need to take this as seriously as it is. I think I just caught up to my own life. Like, this is we're not joking around here. Sort of in the way it took place with like recognizing your place as an author in relationship to the people in social media. Yes, I'm constantly surprised. Like, oh wow, this is what's actually happening around. I am the last one to show up to my own party at every turn. I am like, well, as long as it's a good party. I mean, I'm serious. Just looking around like, are you listening to me?
Yeah.
I didn't set out to do any of this. I think that's part of it. I didn't have ambitions for it. And so I am regularly surprised by the capacity, really just the volume of people and influence that I'm having to steward. And so that's why I told you earlier, you asked me, do you feel responsible for people? I'm like, gravely. I mean, I'm still surprised they're all here. I can't believe they're listening. And so, I feel heavily responsible. So in general, if I were on my better days, I would say that I'd like to think of myself, and I want to kind of untangle this word from some of its tentacles. I'd like to think of myself as a pastor. And not in just the way that you're thinking of it, but I'm thinking I want to pastor all these people. I want to lead them well. I want to inspire them toward goodness and wholeness and community, and I want to steward souls and ideas and gifts. And so when I am not just ready to put the whole thing in the dumpster and set it on fire, I like to think of myself as a pastor.
Can I wrap it up with more?
Yeah.
Insofar as you are leading and pastoring, and while there wasn't necessarily like, here's all the stuff I was trying to do, now I'm doing all the things I was trying to do, there is definitely more self-awareness now.
Yeah.
Quick answer. Do you think about the future? Do you think about your future?
I wouldn't say that I think about it very far. Simply because I wouldn't have picked out all the things I was doing this year, 2 years ago. I just don't know. I don't know what's happening.
Well, can we play an imaginative game then?
Sure.
If you do well, and you get to decide some of what the world around you looks like. Yeah. By your influence, under your influence. Sure. If you get to shape the culture that you have access to, if you get to shape things, what does it look like 10, 15 years from now? 10, 15 years down the line from now. If you do well at what you do, you remain healthy the way you're remaining healthy, how will the world have changed?
That's a great question. I would love if my influence plays out like I hope it does. Yeah. Like if I continue to inject this into my community, what will it look like in 10 years? I hope that it looks like it's mostly women. Women are the majority of my community. So I love to see women leading really well in their own communities. And I would love to see them more courageous. I would love to see them using their voice as well. Less afraid. Fear is just it's quicksand in the community of women. And it comes from a lot of it's legit. I mean, this is the air we're breathing, and women are intimidating, and their dawning understanding of their own capacity and power and influence and voice threatens the status quo. Yes. So it's true that there's a lot of opposition to it. That's real. I mean, whereas like, as a side note, the pushback in like entrepreneurism and leadership when it comes to like male leadership is like, ignore your fears, just move through. Yeah. Whereas in the world of women, it's like, here's the thing. Yeah. Like all these things have real roots in real things that happen to women. It does. At home. It's and real. In the career place and on the street. Right. So we don't get to just say, ignore our fears. Right. It's real. That is stuff women have to move through in a lot of layers. And so I'd like to see, this word is completely overused, but I'd like to see some empowerment there. Like I still feel like a lot of times in my community of women, I mean, I certainly steward a lot of strength. I got some alphas in my group and I love them. But I'm also stewarding this enormous groundswell of women who are like, I'm not ready, and I think this, but I'm afraid to say this. Yeah. I want this, but I'm afraid to go after it. Right. I'm dreaming this, but I'm afraid to try to execute it. So I'd love to see a reversal of fortunes there, that in 10 to 15 years, some of the things that we're talking about now about how to battle fear, how to be more courageous, how to be more sincere and genuine and truthful. I hope that's a confusing message in 15 years, that they're like, why are you telling? We are already doing that. Yeah. We don't need that kind of leadership anymore. So I'm hoping to not be leading like this in 15 years, to see it through, to see it through to its hopeful ending. In fact, when I put on social media probably 6 months ago, something of a very rough outline of the book I'm writing right now.
Right.
And I don't even know how to talk about it yet. It's so early where if I try to explain it, it'll take 27 minutes. But if I had to sum it up, it's essentially walking women through these 15 things to say, let's work through this concept of like who you are and how you're created, what your deal is, what's true about you, and get to the end of it and be able to say something true. Like
actionably true.
Actually true. Like, this is true about me. You may not like it. It might make you uncomfortable, but this is how
not potentially true. Not like, I'd like this to be true.
Right.
Just this is
identity
true.
Heavily in hand, convictions in hand, dreams and wishes in hand. Yeah. Just this very self-assured space. So but when I put this on Facebook, I'm like, guys, this is, and I pulled all this out. I mined it out of social media for a year. So I went through every conversation that I led and stewarded and hosted and found these are our threads. These are the places where my community wants leadership. My community is looking for courage, instruction, scripts even. Give me some language around this. And I said, guys, this is what you have said that you want from me. And there was one comment that I loved. I hung on to it because this woman was like, I don't get this. Like, I already do all this. I know how I was made. I know what I was made. I have my ideas in hand, and I don't understand. I'm like, you're my goal. And I told her that. I'm like, you are my goal. What I would love. And then there was surrounded by 1,000 other comments saying, oh, please talk about all this stuff. That's so good. I said, I want you to see your community of women needs instruction here, but I want them to see this is where we want to get. Yeah. Where this is like, who needs to talk about this? Yeah. We got this. So anyhow, I'd love to see that. I hope I don't even know what to lead in 15 years. that we have a healthy community of women who are contributing to the world and making it more beautiful and kind and creative and generous. And they're raising their kids in strength, and they're battling all the isms that just plague us. Just absolutely plague us. The sexism and misogyny and racism, all of it. So that's my goal.
That's good.
Yeah.
There's that element of there's that weird sort of theological interplay question folks ask about the invisibility of God or the invisibility of Christ in like functional day-to-day Christianity. And part of the answer to that is like if there was this like very obvious constant reminder in the world of like the presence of the divine, then you wouldn't be seen. And part of the service done, part of the like the space created by an invisible presence of God is that then I get to be that person. And part of what good leadership ends up doing is I'm here for a time. Yeah. And then it's you. And what I want the world to see is actually you. Is that moment where you're pointing at this woman in social media like, this is what I want folks to see. Right there. Like, I'm here so that can happen, and then when this happens, I hope to be able to watch.
Oh, just thrill me. Attention. I mean, it would just absolutely thrill me to work myself out of the job I currently have. Yeah. I hope in 15 years that I'm leading leaders. That's what I hope. I have this real sense right now that I'm excited to develop new voices. Yeah. So that's where I hope I am.
Well, thank you for your time.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Okay. My absolute thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening to this episode of the At Sea podcast. If you'd like to follow up with Jen Hatmaker, read along with her blog, check out her really, really entertaining and informative podcast, or find out about the book she's currently writing, you can visit her at jenhatmaker.com, JenHatmaker.com. You can find me at justinmcroberts.com, and if you'd like to support the work of this podcast, you can jump to patreon.com and just search my name, Justin McRoberts. Until next time.